Sometimes we know part of the solution that we need when we're working with a large language model. So we have a problem and we know some of the steps or some of the pieces that we want involved in the solution, but we don't know the full solution. And what we need is the large language model to help us fill in the blanks, to put together the missing steps, basically to complete the recipe. Give us the detailed set of steps that take the ingredients that we have or the bits of information we know about how to cook this particular dish and fills in all of the gaps. And so the recipe pattern is a pattern for doing this. We give the large language model some goal that we're trying to achieve, and we give it the parcel set of steps that we know that we're going to have to involve in creating the overall sort of solution, the recipe, the goal, whatever it is. We're going to give it part of what's needed and ask it to fill in the rest. So this is really a way of getting the large language model to help us fill in our gaps in a process or gaps in our knowledge about a series of steps that need to be taken. So the recipe pattern can be really useful. And I'm also going to show you that our sort of intuitive shorthand for describing gaps and ways that we talk about things that we know are part of a process or part of a series of steps, but we don't know the exact details, that our intuitive way of expressing that is actually something that the large language models like ChatGPT can understand. So let's take a look at an example of this. So we're going to say we're going to add a feature. So we're going back to our trip planning application. And we're going to say, I will tell you my start and end destination, and you will provide a complete list of stops for me, including places to stop between my start and destination. So notice what we're doing is we're providing essentially an incomplete recipe. We're saying, here's where I'm going to start, here's where I'm going to get to, but I need to know what goes in between. And it goes back and it takes one of our prior examples of going from, or actually it creates its own example of traveling from Nashville to Atlanta, and notices that you're going to go through Chattanooga on the way, which is true. If you're going to drive from Nashville to Atlanta, you're probably going to drive through Chattanooga, and it suggests things that you could do, like going to the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga or Lookout Mountain. So where it gets interesting is, if you remember back to the trip planning application, I taught it my own language for describing my trips. And so I used the meta language creation pattern. Now I'm going to combine the meta language creation pattern and the recipe pattern to do something interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Nashville, 0. So I'm starting in Nashville, and then I'm going to have just dots or ellipses, basically dot, 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 arrow, dot, 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 arrow, Fairhope, Alabama, 2. So I'm going from Nashville to Fairhope, Alabama, and basically what I'm signaling to the model is, I want you to complete it. Tell me where to stop in between. And I'm indicating I want to stop twice. I'm willing to make 2 stops in between, but I don't know where. You fill in the recipe that gets me from Nashville to Fairhope and has 2 stops in between. And it understands this. So dots are obviously dot, dot, dot is a natural way that we can express something we don't know. It understands that, and it fills in the recipe. It says we're going to start in Nashville, Tennessee, no time spent as per your request. I highly recommend spending time in Nashville, Tennessee. I live here, so all of my trips start with not staying in Nashville, because I'm always here. Well, not always, but a lot of the time. And then it fills in the 2 stops for us. It fills in Birmingham, Alabama, and Montgomery, Alabama, which are both between Nashville and Fairhope if you take the most direct route. And then the end is going to be Fairhope, Alabama. So you notice it's basically understood the constraints that we placed on it. We said Nashville, 0, arrow, and so we're using our language. We're just defining the starting point. We're then saying dot, 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 meaning this is something I don't know. It's a blank spot in my template or my recipe. So you need to fill in this recipe with where we should stop here, and then arrow, dot, 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 and I'm saying here's another blank spot where I don't know what should go here in the recipe, fill it in, and then arrow, Fairhope, Alabama. And so it's gone, and we're using the recipe pattern here to get ChatGPT or another large language model to complete our request. And if we went and we did this again, so if we said, LA, and let's just do 1, and then we said dot, 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 dot. And we'll see how it interprets this because I think it's unclear to me what it even means. And then we said we're going to go to New York. Let's see what it interprets this as. And so it now starts giving us a trip saying, okay, here's where you're going to start. Los Angeles one day, then you're going to go to Las Vegas, Grand Canyon, Santa Fe. I'm curious if it'll, how many stops it's going to have. So you notice that when I did this one, I had 4 placeholders here. I'm getting more than 4 placeholders in between because I kind of expressed that I wasn't really sure. Like I don't have dot, 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 arrow, dot, 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 arrow, and then I'm there. I just have dot, a whole bunch of dots, which is much more indefinite, which is exactly what I wanted it to do, interestingly enough, and I didn't know if it was going to get there. But I was basically expressing, I'm going to go from LA to New York. I'm going to have a bunch of stops in between. I don't know what they should be. Plan my trip for me. Here's how long I'm going to stay in LA. Here's how long I'm going to stay in New York. And everybody can argue with how long I'm spending in each place. They're all wonderful places, but it interprets the missing pieces of my recipe. It probably also knows that I'm going to need quite a few stops if I'm going to make this a leisurely drive from Los Angeles to New York, and it fills in a whole bunch of different places that I could potentially stop along the way in order to have an interesting trip from Los Angeles to New York if I run a very long road trip as a vacation. And so this shows you how the recipe pattern works. You give the large language model the goal that you're trying to achieve, the pieces that you know need to fit into the solution, or the steps that have to be there and where they're going to be placed. And then you ask it to fill in the rest. And you can use ellipses or other types of things to indicate places where you don't know what's going to be there and you want it to fill it in. And it'll go and complete the recipe for you using the recipe pattern.